country could think, oh, if its population doesn't want to allow, as Brazil has done, to have people that live actually resources below the poverty threshold, below actually the basic needs. If this social concept actually assumed by many countries, nations of the world will be taken to a global scale, and we're to think in a community of nations
that is concerned about those people that have not sufficient to live on with a basic right, which is the right to life. It would require from them on a system of redistribution of resources. And that system, by statistics and mathematics in the article, it would require more or less, or we could think about a system of international taxes of the highest incomes, and also indirect taxes on commercial translation. If 3/4 would be on 1/4 on international commerce, we would arrive to the conclusion that the world needs 1.11% of tax on incomes in order to allow a certain reduction. Then it is not 0.7%, it's 1.11%. This is interesting because we are repeating and repeating paradigms and axiomatic. How many years does the purpose of the 0.7% has? The first part was in the Iglesias Conference in 1958. The world has changed. And then by the United Nations in 78. But the concept of 1% by public financing, and then the companies, the private sector, and there comes a time when we have to see these challenges on equity, levels of redistribution, frameworks that go beyond the current volatility and the limitation of the state help to development, which has been demonstrated that has little respect the principles of effective help or cooperation. What I would like to present a last graph. This is updated. You will see the list of countries with adult infantile mortality, life expectation, but also reflected the use of hectares, carbon emissions. You will see that in the work. And this is the graph of countries according to their use of hectares, life expectancy and mortality, and those countries that are in sustainable health equity, just a few countries that use less carbon emissions, and also the countries. I won't tell them which the countries are. I won't tell you. Some of them. Here you see. These are countries, the life expectancy and use of hectares within sustainable limits in the planet. And these countries very little would have imagined as development models for the world. Which is just two more slides. There's no moderator. This is a risk because I get enthusiastic with the talk, but well, I will come to an end soon. Which is the response of the world? The response is that we have framework of human rights which is weak. That is a weak global framework. We have a weak global economic governance regarding regulation and tax redistribution. We have a weak global social governance. We are starting to talking about a global security system. Brazil has been very I always speak to the Brazilian people because they are doing a lot of things, but also Unasur and the South countries that are presenting other alternative and possibilities to take not to the World Assembly but to the General Assembly, United Nations, an objective for general health system, universal system, and also the weak global governance and also ecological governance. These are other aspects of how the help is not being respected, and I wanted to conclude my last words with the following. This is the GDP gap that would be necessary to maintain countries with per capita income higher than 3,500. How much would it be necessary for the distribution of per capita income if 75% through the tax, direct tax, and how would be the tax on international transactions and trade? There has been a lot of debate in this financial transaction, but to some extent they institutionalize or bring legitimacy to these stocks on inequity. However, this is the last one, I promise, he says. This is the level that would be necessary that would be necessary to redistribute in the world, that would be necessary so that the redistribution of resources would be closer. So in order to get it closer, we have to have inferior limits and superior limits, and that is very difficult to get superior limits. While some countries have very high resources, there are two manners in which some of them may have the minimum dignity that has to be with abundance. And in order to maintain the average and not affect the forthcoming generation, we have to limit excess. The limit will not come from the abundant countries. And the second plate, which is the predictability of international help. This is international help and the needs that would require a redistribution of resources that could avoid the death of these 20 million people. What is the predictability of the help? 1.3 years is so volatile. It doesn't allow countries of low income to be able to have a reform in their models. And how is it aligned to the processes and policies and parliaments and also the budgets of the country? The alignment is also very low. And how equitable it is. For example, 50% of this country, these are, in a very quick summary, the challenges that we could dream about a world inequity, trying to avoid these 20 million deaths due to the resources and the distribution of resources. So Latin America has to have a very brave position, and Unasur also a very brave position, in order to take it to the international arena and to produce the changes necessary and desired.